Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Dati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavansha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadhaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so today we are starting chapter 13. Last time we finished chapter 12, which focused on the 5 most potent items of devotional service. And chapter 13 is a continuation of these 5 most potent items of devotional service, so we can understand the importance of them. So many chapters, so many parts of different chapters are dedicated to these 5 most potent items of devotional service. The 5 items, the final 5 items, are the most potent, meaning that they are the most effective ways to revive one's dormant love of Godhead, bhava bhakti. So sadhana leads to bhava, right? Sadhana, bhava, prema. So if something leads to bhava very easily, then it becomes the most potent item of devotional service. So there is something very significant about these 5 because they lead to bhava bhakti. They particularly inspire bhava within the heart and bhava bhakti within the heart. And once again, these 5 most potent items are worshipping the deity with great devotion, 2, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from advanced devotees, 3, associating with advanced devotees of similar heart, 4, chanting the holy name, and 5, living in Mathura. So it's significant here that worshipping the deity is also mentioned as one of the 5 that lead to bhava bhakti. So sometimes we may think, oh, deity worship is more for neophyte devotees, not so important, not so powerful. But Rupa Goswami mentions that worshipping the deity leads to bhava bhakti. Hearing Srimad Bhagavatam leads to bhava bhakti. Associating with advanced devotees definitely leads to bhava bhakti. Chanting the holy name, definitely. And living in Mathura, in Vrindavan, very quickly we get bhava bhakti. It becomes exceptionally powerful. So sadhana bhakti strives to arouse one's ecstatic love for Krishna. Bhava bhakti, lying dormant in the heart. These 5 items evoke that bhava more effectively than any other and are therefore the most potent ways to execute sadhana bhakti. So once you do the most important items, which is surrendering to the spiritual master and serving the spiritual master and taking initiation from the spiritual master, then these 5 items evoke bhava more than any of the other items among the 64 items. So how important they are So we must, take shelter, take shelter of these items. So this was Srila Prabhupada's expertise, that in his Krishna consciousness movement, he put these 5 things at the forefront of his movement. And that's why his movement is a bhava. It's a bhava bhakti movement. With a little contemplation, one will notice that Srila Prabhupada built ISKCON on the pillars of these 5 most potent items: lavish deity worship, daily Srimad Bhagavatam class, association of devotees, Nama Sankirtan morning and evening, yearly festivals in Mayapur and Vrindavan. Thus, Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON is most potent for evoking the living entity's original ecstatic love of Godhead, Bhava Bhakti. So, if anyone has any doubt, does ISKCON lead us to Prema Bhakti? Well, it's designed in that way. We're right now on the level of sadhana. It leads us to Bhava, and Bhava leads to Prema. So the first one, lavish deity worship. Regarding worship of the form of the Lord or deity, Rupa Goswami has written the following verse. Very beautiful verse. My dear friend, if you still have any desire to enjoy the company of your friends within this material world, then don't look upon the form of Krishna, who is standing on the bank of Keshi Ghat, a bathing place in Vrindavan. He is known as Govinda, and his eyes are very enchanting. He is playing upon his flute, and on his head there is a peacock feather, and his whole body is illuminated by the moonlight in the sky. So this is actually in Sanskrit, it's a specific term, I'm forgetting the term, but this is convincing or communication through negation. So he's saying, do not look upon the form of the Lord if you have any desire for material enjoyment. Clearly, his message is that we want to look on the form of the Lord because we want to get free of material enjoyment. But he's doing it in a reverse logic way. Oh, if you have any friendship, any attachment left for this world, then do not look upon the form of the Lord, because that attachment will go away when you see how beautiful the Lord is. So actually this last week, since last Saturday to this Saturday, I was in India, in a short trip to India, and I had the chance to visit Sri Vrindavan Dham. And there have darshan of Radha Shyama Sundar and Krishna Balaram. I went there for 2 purposes. One, to visit His Holiness Kadamba Kanana Maharaj, who's giving up his body. And secondly, also to visit my Guru Maharaj, who is now well, but was not so well physically. So it was a very nice trip. And they happened to be in Vrindavan, both of them, because my Guru Maharaj went to visit Kadamba Kanana Maharaj. So in Vrindavan, we all have darshan of Radha Shyama Sundar and Krishna Balaram. And just by seeing them, a person realizes that how beautiful Krishna is, and how there's no comparison to anything in this world. Krishna's beauty has no comparison. Specifically, Radha Shyama Sundar are so beautiful. For hours, people just stand in front of the deities and they cry, and they cannot get their eyes off of them. Every morning you go from Mangal Arati and you see them. And one time Purijan Prabhu was asked, he served in Vrindavan for many years. He also served in London for many years. So he was asked that, where are the most beautiful deities in the world? Which deities are your favorite, most beautiful deities? So in response to that, Purijan Prabhu replied, I think Radha Landanishwar are my most favorite beautiful deities. So then one devotee asked him that, Prabhu, you lived in Vrindavan for so many years, you live there, then why you do not say Radha Shyama Sundar? They're clearly, maybe more beautiful, and you're so attached to them. Why didn't you say that? And he said, the reason I didn't say them, because Srila Prabhupada actually said that Radha Shyam Sundar and Krishna Balaram are not deities. They're actually Krishna themselves, Radha Krishna themselves. That they're actually the Lord manifesting themselves. And this is Krishna himself there. And this is why there's just no comparison. So many, we have so many forms of the Lord, but no comparison to Radha, Shyam Sundar, and Krishna Balaram. These deities were Srila Prabhupada's deities. And that's why they weren't deities. They were actually Sakshat Krishna Balaram and Radha Shyam Sundar. They are that. And you can feel it. It's like just that worship, the reciprocation is like just so amazing. And it's actually a fact that the deity and the great deities like of Rupa Goswami, Radha Govindaji, and Madan Mohan of Sanatan Goswami, that the deities are the manifestation of the heart of a devotee. The way Krishna is manifest in the heart of a specific devotee, in that way he manifests outside. And this is why we see Radha Shyam Sundar Krishna Balaram. They're so beautiful, so large, so magnanimous, because that they are the manifestation of Krishna in the heart of Srila Prabhupada. And once you see that form of the Lord, you know that there's no form that matches them. Once you see Radha Shyam Sundar, you know that there's nothing in this world that matches their beauty. And Rupa Goswami is warning us of that and telling us through this warning that therefore, by worshiping the deity and seeing the form of the Lord like this, we'll lose all material attachment, we'll lose material infatuation, and our love for Krishna will become spontaneous. And this is how and why deity worship evokes bhava bhakti, because by seeing that beautiful form of the Lord, we get bhava, we get blessed by those feelings. Prabhupada now explains the purport of this previous verse that we read. The purport of this verse is that if someone becomes attached to the Sri Murti or deity of Krishna by worshipping at home, then he will forget his relationships of so-called friendship, love, and society. Thus, it is a duty of every householder to install deities of the Lord at home and to begin the process of worshipping along with all of his family members. This will save everyone from such unwanted activities as going to clubs, cinemas, and dancing parties, and smoking, drinking, etc. All such nonsense will be forgotten if one stresses the worship of the deities at home. So this is the higher taste that removes the lower taste. And Prabhupada here, I was saying that this deity worship, it helps us transcend the desire for unwanted activity like cinemas, clubs, dancing parties. In another place, Srila Prabhupada says the same thing in the Nectar Devotion. And this is true of the deities of worship at home and also true of worship of the deities in the temple. I remember when I was a graduate student studying in England, then, the other students were not devotees, and every Friday, Saturday, they would go out and, spend time enjoying, in their parties and dancing and these ballroom dances and with their girlfriends and boyfriends. And, I was a teenager at that time, or more than a teenager, a little older than a teenager, but sometimes I would feel that maybe I'm missing out or have a desire, the desire would come that, I want to check it out or something. And about an hour and a half away was the manor, the Bhaktivedanta Manor. It was an hour and a half away from Oxford University, where I was studying. And on Sundays, especially, and also Saturdays, we would go there. I would go there to the Bhaktivedanta Manor. And the Bhaktivedanta Manor is so beautiful. Radha Gokulananda are so beautiful. And it's filled with devotees, and they have amazing Sunday program, amazing kirtan. And it's amazing that when I'd go to the Bhaktivedanta Manor and, we would do these, as they say, rip roaring kirtans, these, just um, amazing prasadam, so colorful, devotees dancing and chanting, and the beautiful, countryside. They had the cows there. It would completely remove any desire that I would have to go to clubs, cinemas, or spend time with my friends. Not my friends really, the friends that I'd see spending time like that. It completely would go, because their enjoyment was so gray and black and white. That's the color of the English weather. It's always gray, it's rainy, it's like everything's made out of stone. It's like black and it's just dull. It's like is like like a underground mine, just like dark, black, cold, and it was just so dull. And the best pleasure they had was dancing and getting intoxicated. And we were also dancing. And we were dancing with people a lot more beautiful, and they were so colorful, and it was so bright. It wasn't like at night when it's like half asleep, people are just like tired. It was so much fun. I would actually think, and this is actually the way I would, like, actually this thought would be there, that my party is better than all these other parties. My friends are a lot nicer than their friends. They're much more cool, and they're much, so much more loving, and the way devotees are, they pack you with so much prasadam, and then they just like adore you, and they praise you, and they love you, and they care for you, and the affection that you feel from them is so fulfilling. Whereas on the non-devotees, it's like they put you down. If you're brown and they're white, then they won't talk to you. If you're short and you're not tall, they'll make fun of you that you're short. If you're a little fat and you have a tummy coming out, they'll make fun of that. Every negative point that you have will be a reason to put you down, and you're struggling. You're trying to rise above this competition and the peer pressure. Always pressure, always feeling not good enough. And with devotees, exactly the opposite. They're always raising you up, always glorifying you. And I realized it's like, this is so much nicer. This is really 100 times, any day I would pay for this rather than paying for the cinemas and the clubs. And this is free. This is something actually worth paying for. And even the on a material level, the girls and the boys there at the temple were far more beautiful and lively and happy to be around than the really proud and oftentimes racist and drunk friends at school. But if the Bhaktivedanta manner was not there, then definitely their life would have become very attractive to me. Because material energy is stronger than you. Maya is Krishna's energy. And if you don't have the spiritual energy, if you don't have the shelter of the spiritual energy, which you get through the temple and the deity and the worship of the deity, then there's no way we can surpass the material energy. The material energy will overpower us. So this is the blessing of Srila Prabhupada's movement and his temples. Because the manner was there, therefore I was able to maintain my spiritual life. Otherwise, definitely I would have gone with the flow. I would have, experimented with these things. I would have, liked doing these things. And so we can save everyone. We can save our family members, our children, our parents, our loved ones from these unwanted sinful activities just by this process of lavish deity worship. So here Prabhupada is talking about the home. The other place in the Nectar devotion that I'm remembering, he actually talks about temples and lavish deity worship. And Prabhupada says that it is only this lavish deity worship, and he's speaking about the temples there, that can counteract these cinemas. These cinemas are also big organizations. And he particularly says and the naked dance shows. Prabhupada says he was probably riding in big cities where they have these clubs. And he said, by these big temples, we can counteract Even a young boy in Krishna consciousness, he says, will not be attracted by these sinful things if they have the shelter of these temples. So, so this is actually our oasis in the desert. The temple is our shelter, and when we don't have it, then we realize how fortunate we are to have it, right? So the next one is reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. So just this is the conclusion of the worship of deity. Therefore, it's not something ordinary. We were reading last time, right, that just by worshiping the deity, we can go back to Goloka Vrindavan, to Krishna's abode. Now, the next thing is reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Particularly, Rupa Goswami mentions Srimad Bhagavatam. He doesn't say reading the scriptures. He says, very important to note, reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam and reading Srimad Bhagavatam evokes bhava bhakti within the heart. Something about it, its narrations, its stories, its pastimes, they're only about the great devotees who are on the level of prema or bhava, and their amazing activities, their heart-wrenching devotional activities inspire that love of God within our heart. Among all the books, this Bhagavatam is Nigama Kalpatarur. So Rupa Goswami further writes to his friend, my dear foolish friend, I think you have already heard some of the auspicious Srimad Bhagavatam, which decries seeking the results of fruitive activities, economic development, and liberation. I think that now it is certain that gradually the verses of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam describing the pastimes of the Lord will enter your ears and go into your heart. This is why we do Shrunvatam Svakatha Krishna. This is why we hear the Katha of Krishna, because through the ears it enters into the heart. And then we embrace Krishna heart to heart. When it enters the heart, then Krishna becomes enwrapped within our hearts. So we read Srimad Bhagavatam, it prepares us for the 10th canto, and then the 10th canto, it's directly Krishna's pastimes. It then overcomes our mind. One should not try to understand the topics of the 10th canto, such as the Rasa Leela, love dance, unless he has spontaneous attraction for Srimad Bhagavatam. One must be situated in pure devotional service before he can relish Srimad Bhagavatam as it is. So, I was once in India, in Vrindavan, and in Govardhan, at Govardhan, and there they have, to this day, and if they've expanded it, they have the Govardhan Vidyapit, which was founded by His Grace Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu. And Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu was, he's actually, he was the scholar of ISKCON. After Srila Prabhupada left, the remaining cantos, canto 10, 11, and 12, were translated by Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu. The commentaries were also translated. And then from those translations, Hridayananda Maharaj summarized them and wrote the purports. But in some sense, it was done by Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu, because he did all the translations, they're his. And so he's been absorbed in the Bhagavatam for years. And so he started this school. He's also a Sanskrit scholar. He's read all the Sandarbhas. He's read the Upanishads, the different Puranas. Very, very learned. His whole life is the absorption in learning Shastra. And so I met him once and I said, what is your advice? What is your guidance? After all these years of study, what should we study? And he said in his very frail voice, shaking voice, he said, after studying all the books and so much, reading Prabhupada's books and everything, I've come to the realization, he said, that the ultimate book is a Srimad Bhagavatam. That we must read and relish the Srimad Bhagavatam. Because this is the final thing. And that had a great impression on me. And later on, I came to realize that in so many places, in one particular, and I didn't save it, that passage, and I wish I did, because it's a very that's like, one place Rupa Goswami says, if someone comes across it, let me know, where he says that when there are differences of opinion among the scriptures or among the devotees, then the ultimate authority to resolve those differences of opinion is the Srimad Bhagavatam. Like, some people say, oh, did the jiva fall? Did he not fall? Did he fall? Did he not fall? So the resolution to that is the Srimad Bhagavatam. And we find the resolution in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the pastime of Puranjana, who reincarnates as Vaidarbhi and King Malayadvaja. And that shows, it's described that how the soul leaves Krishna out of his own choice. Or many other places like this in terms of the science of bhakti. Gaudiya Vaishnavism, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, is actually the systematization of the Srimad Bhagavatam. If you read this Chaitanya Charitamrita, half of it is just Srimad Bhagavatam verses. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, the 6 Goswamis, what they did is they took the Bhagavatam, which is written in story form through the lives of devotees, in a narrative way. They took it and they systematized it, that this is the philosophy that the Bhagavatam is saying, and this is what it's teaching. And this is because the messages of the Bhagavatam are so deep that we don't find it anywhere else in the world, in any other book. It's said that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the very body of Lord Chaitanya. And the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam is given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So then we may say, well, but what about the Chaitanya Charitamrita? Absolutely, it's the highest book. Why? Because it gives the essence of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It is the Bhagavatam. Therefore, it's also one of the authorities. Therefore, relishing Srimad Bhagavatam and relishing Chaitanya Charitamrita gives us Bhava Bhakti. Because Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is basically giving us the essence of Bhagavatam. So it is the Bhagavatam. That is the basis. That is the core. All the greatest devotees, their lives, their teachings, their example is described in the Bhagavatam. And Srila Prabhupada says that the more we read Bhagavatam, the more we associate with these great personalities through the pages of the Bhagavatam, the more we imbibe their qualities. See, if we are living someplace like, I was living in Indiana, in Evansville, we may not have advanced association. We may have association of devotees, but not like, very advanced association. So we cannot depend only on our local association. We also need very advanced association. All of us do. Even if we're in a big temple, we do. Because how much can you sit with the sannyasis or the senior devotees or, the senior matajis? How much can you sit with them? They have limited time, but we need the advanced association. So we get that advanced association by associating through the Bhagavatam. And when we are reading Bhagavatam, we are actually associating with them. We're actually associating with Shukadeva Goswami, with Maharaj Parikshit. We're associating with Vidura, with Maitreya, with Uddhava. Someone like us, right? So far, we get that association. And then these pastimes become manifest to us, such that we're not just reading them, but we're actually relishing them. We're actually seeing them. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada said, reading of Srimad Bhagavatam is pure devotional service. The only reason we have other services, he says, is because we know that you cannot read Bhagavatam continuously. We don't have that spontaneous devotional service. Actually, to relish Srimad Bhagavatam, we already need to be on the level of bhava. But because we're not on that level, we are reading to gain that, but also doing other services. But reading Srimad Bhagavatam is the complete, fully satisfying, fully complete service to the Lord. reading and distributing Bhagavatam also, right? Sharing it with others. And here, Prabhupada is saying we're not qualified for Rasa Leela. Yet the first book that Prabhupada writes is the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Krishna book. And even the man who has a cigarette in his mouth on the street, is reading the Rasa Leela in the pages of the Krishna book. So why is then Prabhupada doing this? Because, see, we have to be on the spontaneous level to relish Srimad Bhagavatam as it is. So if we want to just read the verses, then we have to be on that level. But when we are reading through the Krishna book, then we are reading the Rasa Leela, but as explained by Srila Prabhupada. See, on the lower stages we can read, but it has to be explained by the pure devotee. And this is why this principle is reading Bhagavatam in the association of advanced devotees, not just reading Srimad Bhagavatam, reading Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of advanced devotees. So if we, on the beginning stages, if we read it without Prabhupada's guidance, that is his purports, that is the Krishna book, then we will misunderstand it. And that is a great offense. But if we read it through Srila Prabhupada, by hearing Prabhupada, then anyone can read it and relish it through Prabhupada's words. So this is why we can distribute the Krishna book, but we cannot distribute the 10th canto by itself to people because they are not ready for it. And but at the same time, they need to read it because this is the way how to get purified. So Prabhupada has given us the Krishna book. Another thing, just Prabhupada, when he was a householder, then it said that as a householder, he would read Bhagavatam 4 hours every day. Imagine. So that was his lifetime in preparation. Prabhupada would spend 4 hours every day reading and relishing Srimad Bhagavatam. It said that by reading Bhagavatam, one can understand every psychological situation in the world, and also how a devotee responds to that psychological situation. I think Prabhupada writes this in maybe the second chapter, the first canto, somewhere in the first 2 cantos he writes this, that we can understand every psychological situation in the world and how to respond to it. So we see devotees in different situations and how they're perfectly responding to it. So we see that devotees in our movement who really take shelter of Bhagavatam, who really invest themselves in reading, studying, repeating, teaching the Bhagavatam, they become very advanced souls. Like Mother Narayani in our movement, her whole life is the Bhagavatam, and she is the first female Diksha Guru in ISKCON. She initiated 2 disciples. And she became so qualified by reading Bhagavatam. So many other Vaishnavis and Vaishnavas like that. So if we can develop a taste for reading Bhagavatam, then our life is successful. Rupa Goswami praises deity worship and study of Bhagavatam in a seemingly backwards ways, right? He's saying you are a foolish friend for reading Bhagavatam. Because by reading Bhagavatam, you are no longer interested in economic development and liberation. Obviously, you should be, right? So he's doing it in like a reverse psychology. Then the chanting of the holy names is the next one. Well, this image actually is showing that Rupa Goswami comes to Prabhupada. It's a very famous incident when Srila Prabhupada is in the Radha Damodar temple and he's meditating on his Guru Maharaj's instruction that when you get time and money, print books in English and go to America and preach. So he's meditating on it and he's thinking, how can I do this? I'm an old man, never traveled outside of India. How can I go to America at this age and spread this Krishna conscious movement and fulfill my Guru Maharaj's instructions? And then Rupa Goswami comes to him, he appears before him, and he tells Srila Prabhupada, just write these books. He said, you just do this and I will do the rest. And this is where Prabhupada could understand that the power is in the books. If we read the books, if we distribute the books, everything else will happen. If any of you might be thinking of starting a home program in your home, like you want to cultivate people, start a Bhakti Vriksha, the easiest way to start The secret is that find a place where you can do a book table and distribute books. And when you distribute books, then you'll find that Krishna sends the very sincere souls to the book table. Otherwise, you'll be like, how do I find these people? How do I get a crowd to listen, to come to the program? But if you distribute books, Krishna will send, and from those people who buy the books, if you write down their name and number, and then afterwards you call them, you invite them to your home, they'll come to your home, and within a few weeks, you'll have a whole group of people. We do all these fancy preaching programs, this, that, with so much effort, but actually Prabhupada gave us the process of we're like, how can I make devotees? And the whole purpose of all these fancy programs to make devotees, just distribute books. And when you distribute books, the mystical thing that happens is that Krishna sends the people. He will send the most sincere people to that table, and the most sincere people will buy those books, and those are the people that you preach to. In other words, book distribution finds the people for you. We have to do our part of fulfilling the instruction, the desire of Srila Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami, which is distributing Bhagavatam in the form of all these books. All these books are Bhagavatam: Science of Self-Realization, Journey of Self-Discovery, Beyond Birth and Death, Bhagavad Gita with the purports. It's all Bhagavatam, because Prabhupada only writes Bhagavatam. So he's writing Bhagavatam in different ways. So if we distribute this Bhagavatam, we do our part, then Krishna sends the people. And so, since a long time, even, I was thinking of how to do program. Should I do program, this, that? And then we went on book distribution, and all the people started coming. So next is chanting the holy name, Harinam Sankirtan. So this is the Yuga Dharma, Harinam Sankirtan. Also, like I was mentioning about book distribution, through Harinam Sankirtan, all the devotees come. Krishna sends people. And it's our most important business, Prabhupada says, this Harinam Sankirtan. It is said that saints have been able to hear the vibrating strings of the Veena in the hands of Narada, who is always singing the glories of Lord Krishna. Now the same sound vibration has entered in my heart, in my ears, and I'm always feeling the presence of the Supreme Personality. Gradually, I am becoming bereft of all attachment for material enjoyment. It's said that how every sound that you make travels around the world 7 times. And this is actually true. Why is it true? Because if I make some sound in my cell phone, then wherever you are in the world, if you are able to tune into that frequency, you can hear me, right? How is it possible? Because the sound is spreading everywhere. Like you may go to France, and if you have that frequency, you can hear me. If you go to London, you can hear me. If you go to Vrindavan, you can hear from there. If you go to Antarctica, you can hear from there. If you go to Brazil, you can hear from there. Wherever in the world you can go. That means sound is all pervasive. So when these pure devotees, when they vibrate the holy name of Krishna, then the whole world benefits, because that sound of the holy name travels everywhere. When we vibrate Krishna's name, then the whole world becomes uplifted. And this is why Harinam Sankirtan. This is why we don't do mental chanting. We chant out loud, because all the living entities become benefited. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes to Haridas Thakur, and he asks Haridas Thakur, how is it possible that all these souls can become liberated? Then Haridas Thakur responds, my dear Lord, you are already liberating them. I was not there, but I've heard from Vallabha Bhattacharya that when you were in the Jarikhand forest and you were chanting, then the trees, the plants, the animals, the lions and the tigers, they all became liberated by your chanting. The tiger and the deer began to embrace. So when your devotees, he says, Vibrate the holy name of the Lord loudly. All the animate and inanimate living entities, they become liberated. So he says, simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna, everyone becomes liberated. And he says, the holy name is so merciful that even if it's not chanted properly or in succession, it still has its effect. So so then he gives various examples of words where there's like 3 words, and the beginning is ha, and the last is re. And he says, because re comes after ha, that person saying these ordinary phrases will get the benefit of saying Hare. And similarly of Rama, if someone says Ra and then, and then says, like he says, running, um, um, in English you don't have ma, you have I don't know, running mustard, then that's the Ra and the ma. Sorry, no, I need Rama. So it has to be ran mustard. So that's Ra ma. So that person will get the benefit of chanting Rama, even if he's saying ran mustard. Now, of course, that's not an English phrase, but just as an example, because that Ra is there and the Ma is there, combined they become Rama. So even like that, if one chants, one becomes purified. So this is the effect of the holy name. The holy name is so powerful. So you have like this car company, right? Ram. Or you have, there's also some company called Rama, something like that. So it's very nice. People are getting spiritual benefit by saying that, because they're saying the name of the Lord. The emphasis in all these potent practices is on chanting. Deity worship involves chanting of mantras and kirtan. When we study the Bhagavatam, we chant about Krishna. We associate with devotees in chanting. When devotees get together, they chant. And everywhere where one goes in the Mathura Vrindavan area, one is hearing and chanting about Krishna. Right? On every tree, the name Radhe Radhe is there. Wherever every temple is singing, chanting about Krishna. So the essence of all these processes is chanting. And because the Yoga Dharma is Harinam Sankirtan, Prabhupada actually says that all the activities of the Krishna consciousness movement should be accompanied with the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. You see. So chanting must accompany everything. Srila Rupa Goswami has described the Mathura Mandala. So now the last one, which is residing in Mathura Dham, I remember the Lord standing by the banks of the Yamuna River, so beautiful amid the Kadamba trees, where many birds are chirping in the gardens. And these impressions are always giving me transcendental realization of beauty and bliss. So this is so the land of Vrindavan, just by going to that land of Vrindavan, it reminds us and absorbs us in Krishna. So transcendental. There's something so transcendental about that place. It's said in the scriptures that even if one has a thought, the desire to go to Vrindavan, just one thinks that maybe I should go to Vrindavan, it's considered that that person has performed hundreds of Ashwamedha Yagyas in previous lifetimes. That's how great even the desire is to go to Vrindavan Dham. That's how great that abode is. This feeling about Mathura Mandala and Vrindavan, described by Rupa Goswami, can actually be felt even by the non-devotees. The places in the 168 square mile district of Mathura are so beautifully situated on the banks of the river Yamuna that anyone who goes there will never want to return to this material world. So even when non-devotees, when they go there, they get feelings of love for Krishna. They get a feeling of love in their heart by visiting the Dham. We see so many of our stalwart devotees, they became devotees just by going to the Dham. His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, when he goes to Vrindavan, this is before he meets Srila Prabhupada, he's just taken aback. It's like, it arouses his love of God. He knows this is it. This is no place in the world like this. This is the effect of the Dham. That place is so spiritually intense, so spiritually potent, that the spiritual fire emanating from that place affects every heart. And this is the thing about the Dhama. If Krishna is present everywhere, what is special about the Dham? That the Dham, these are points of access to the spiritual world, to Krishna. Just like you have a stove, right? Some of you may have an electric stove. And the whole electric stove is exactly the same. It's a glass top, one piece of glass on top. It's a flat top stove. So it's all the stove, right? But only within those circles you feel the heat. Or rather, within those circles, if you touch, you get burnt. So the Dham is like that. Everywhere Krishna is there, but those specific places are access ways to the heat of Krishna, because that's the circle where Krishna is giving that mercy freely, very powerfully, because it's where Krishna was, where Krishna is. So that's the Dham are transcendent space, although externally they're the material, sort of say, world, but right below it is the spiritual world, and the heat right behind it, the heat emanates into the material realm, so to say. Of course, it's not material at all, but we see the material aspect. So we just see the matter, but the heat, this actual Dham, radiates into the material consciousness that we have. Simply by remembering the Dham, one can be attracted to Krishna. What to speak of living there? What to speak of living there? So just on this one on the Dham, I want to mention that when I was in Vrindavan just a few days ago, I visited Kadambakananda Maharaj, and His Holiness Kadambakananda Maharaj is such a, he's a truly ecstatic devotee of the Lord. He's like a prema bhakta, so amazing. If any of you have heard his kirtans and his classes, they're extraordinary. And his spiritual master Jayadvaita Maharaj, so as he's leaving his body, he just has a few days more probably on this planet. Then Jayadvaita Maharaj is sitting next to him. He's been there the whole time. This is a case where the disciple is leaving the body and the spiritual master is next to him the whole time. And when I was there, then Jayadvaita Maharaj was telling us that Maharaj has done so much service. I mean, first thing was telling us that he said that Jayadvaita Maharaj said that I'm surprised even to this day, even though I know this already, he's his own disciple, but he's surprised at the level, at the depth of Krishna consciousness that Kadambakananda Maharaj has. He says, even to this day, as he's leaving his body, I'm surprised at the depth of his Krishna consciousness. And he said that Kadambakananda Maharaj did so much service for Krishna Balaram in Vrindavan. Kadambakananda Maharaj was the temple president of ISKCON Vrindavan for many, many years. He said that the world will never know how much service he's done. And Kadambakananda Maharaj particularly said many times while he was well, he said that it was his service in the Dham that really purified him. Because when we're serving in the Dham and we're in the Dham, like, you have no choice. It's much more difficult to just serve Krishna impersonally or halfway or just part-time. Like, that place has so much spiritual energy. If you're going to serve there, you have to be absorbed in Krishna all the time, because all around you, people are just like absorbed in Krishna. Everything is just about Krishna. You go to Govardhan and there's throngs of people trying to take darshan of Govardhan, going in those temples, throngs of people going into the Krishna Balaram temple. constant kirtan going on, that service is so powerful that it purifies a person. And his passing is actually testament to the fact that we all often think that only Prabhupada and Prabhupada's disciples can come to that level, that we see in these people, Prabhupada disciples. But Kadambakananda Maharaj is a grand disciple. He's a disciple of Jayadvaita Maharaj, who is a sannyasi, and he's an initiating guru while his spiritual master is on the planet, and a grand disciple that even anyone, even a grand disciple of Srila Prabhupada, which is most of us here, and the great grand disciples, we can attain that same level by executing this process of Bhakti Yoga. I mean, he's made it to the spiritual world. So many in the Dubna Maharaj came and said, you're going to the spiritual world. His spiritual master is sitting, Maharaj was lying on his bed, and Jayadvaita Maharaj is sitting next to him on the bed. His spiritual master, what to speak of someone chanting to him at the time of leaving his body, his spiritual master is sitting next to him at the time of leaving his body. I mean, how can he not think of Krishna? These, your spiritual masters is helping you give up this body, holding your hand while you do that, and not helping him really. I mean, he's fully absorbed. There's nothing else. He's just deep in meditation. And if Maharaj wanted, he could have lived for many more years, but he decided never to take any medicine, any treatment for his cancer. And then voluntarily one day he decided, I'm just going to drink water. So you can also see he's not being forced to leave. There's a calling. He's being called somewhere, and he's voluntarily leaving. The cancer is just an excuse. It's just the indication from Krishna. And then when I met Maharaj, I was fortunate to have a very brief meeting with him. Then Maharaj was there, and I asked Maharaj that please, when you go to the spiritual world, please put in a prayer for us. Please pray for us. And then Maharaj said, first you pray for me. While I'm here, you have to pray for me, because I'm leaving my body and I need the prayers of the devotees. He said, you have to pray for me. And when I'm there, then I'll pray for you. So he did. So he was saying, you have to pray for me. But then he said, when I'm there, at the same time, he said he knew that he's going there. How could he not go to the spiritual world? He said, then I'll pray for you. So I immediately agreed to that, because I thought, this is a very good bargain, right? If I pray for Maharaj, well, what will my prayers do? Absolutely nothing. His spiritual master is right next to him. He's already going to the spiritual world. But then if I pray for Maharaj, then he'll keep his side of the bargain. So then if he prays for me, then, oh my gosh, that's how powerful that will be, right? So then Maharaj, he said something very wonderful. He said, see, we can never go to Krishna empty-handed. He said, I cannot go to Krishna empty-handed. And he said with such feeling, we cannot go to Krishna empty-handed. And that meant two things. Two ways he was saying. The first is that we cannot go to Krishna empty-handed. That means we cannot go to Krishna without the blessings of devotees. We must have the blessings of the devotees within our hands. And secondly, we don't go to Krishna empty-handed because we don't go alone. The devotee never wants to go alone to the spiritual world. The devotee always takes others with him to the spiritual world. Right? Dhruva Maharaj is going to the spiritual world, but then he realizes, where's my mother? She brought me to Krishna consciousness. I have to take her. He says, stop the plane. And then the Vishnudutas, they say, turn back and see, your mother's right behind you. She's right there. He says, okay, now I can go. This is why it's so wonderful, so amazing to serve a devotee, because those who serve the devotee feels indebted to them and takes them with them to the spiritual world. It's the quickest, it's a shortcut to the spiritual world. If we don't serve the devotees, then yes, through our hard effort, we can try to advance. But if we serve the devotees, then they take us with them when it's our time to go. And he says, we never go to Krishna empty-handed. And this is actually the fifth one here, that associating with great devotees. He was associating with the Dham, and in the Dham there's great devotees. With associating with the Dham, he became who he was. And if we want advancement, then we have to associate with devotees like him. Actually, Aindra Prabhu used to say, when he was on this planet, he says that actually the Dham reveals the Nam. So all these things are interconnected. The Nam reveals the Dham, but the Dham is also Guru, and the Dham reveals the Nam. Right? Because the Dham is also Guru. It's one of our Gurus. The Dham teaches us. You'll notice this when you go to Vrindavan Dham. The place teaches you lessons. The Vrindavan Dham teaches us so many things. So we have to associate with these great devotees because they don't go to Krishna empty-handed. If we can associate with them, if we can please them, then they will take us with them. The great attraction to Krishna that is described is the result of association with great devotees. And those of you, all of you who have associated with devotees, you know this, that there's nothing like, we intellectually understand so many things and we read, but when you get in the association of a great devotee, then all of a sudden it's all there. Like you actually see everything you've been reading, everything in the person of that devotee. And immediately you know, this is how to do Krishna consciousness, or this is what it means to be Krishna conscious. And you get an attraction for Krishna. The great attraction to Krishna that is described in the descriptions of Bhava Bhakti is the result of association with great devotees. If we keep associating, the problem is we associate and then we leave the association. We don't think that it's important. If we keep associating, we have no place to go other than Bhava Bhakti, other than to Krishna. Narad Muni became a great soul because of his association with the Paramahansas, with the Amalatmas, the perfected souls, the great swans, the great devotees of the Lord. In these statements about devotional service, sometimes it may appear that the results have been overestimated, but actually there's no overestimation. Some devotees, as revealed scriptures give evidence, have had immediate results by such association, although this is not possible for all. For a person who is already in contact with Krishna consciousness, the described results are not unusual. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, if you read the Bhagavatam cover to cover, then the number one repeated message of the Bhagavatam is associating with great devotees. It says we must follow the Mahatmas. We may be with the Mahatmas. The householder purifies his existence by serving the Mahatmas, by inviting the Mahatmas to their home. Every opportunity we get, they're coming to the airport. We should be fighting over who gets to pick them up and bring them to the temple. Any opportunity we get to associate with the great souls, we must associate. That is, then we know we're actually acting in knowledge. Because if we have the knowledge, then we know that this is the most valuable thing in the world. The association of a devotee cannot be compared to anything else in this world. It's the most valuable thing. Whatever price we must pay the price to get the association of devotees. The ticket to India is $2,000. Take that ticket, go and associate with devotees. You need to take a week off work, go and take that time off and associate with great devotees. Because especially the very advanced devotees, if we get a chance to associate with them, the gifts that we get from Krishna are unlimited, are so important. They stay with us for the rest of our lives. Srila Prabhupada, the short moments, the exchanges that devotees had with Srila Prabhupada, they became their lifeline. is a life-transforming experience. Some of the most wonderful things to hear when you want to hear something and think, well, what should I hear? Hear the Prabhupada memories on YouTube. Type in Prabhupada memories and just hear them one after the other. They are so absorbing. Like normally, after we hear a class, we're kind of like done. We want to do other things. But these memories, when you hear them, it's like the hard part is how do you stop? You hear them one after the other. That Prabhupada did this and he was so amazing this way. And oh, actually, this is the right way to do things. And this is why he did this. Their memories of Prabhupada are just so amazing. So like heart satisfying. So satisfying to the heart. After describing the 64 items of devotional service, when we ask about other processes not mentioned, such as following the principles of Varna and Ashram, these are external, but can help bhakti, and when helpful, should be accepted. So then Rupa Goswami describes that there are other things that can assist in the process of bhakti, and one of them is Varnashram, because we talked about so many things, but we didn't talk about Varnashram. Prabhupada said that 50% of his mission was not finished because he was not able to establish Varnashram. So how does that fit into all these things? Varnashram helps us in the practice of bhakti. Because if we are properly situated in our ashram, then we can execute these practices very nicely. Right? If we're a householder and we're properly situated as a householder, we can worship the deity, we can read Bhagavatam as a family, we can do all these things. But if we're, switching partners every few months and there's no culture, there's no society, then though bhakti is transcendental, we will have difficulty in executing devotional service. Some scholars argue that simply by following the principles of Varnashram, one can gradually rise to the perfections reached by practicing devotional service. But this argument is not accepted by the great authorities. So Varnashram help one, can assist one in the practice of bhakti. But they are not replacing bhakti, nor by themselves are they bhakti. They're only bhakti in service to bhakti, as assistance to bhakti. And this is after sort of making this clarification, this nuance. Srila Rupa Goswami ends this chapter, and this concludes actually the 64 items of devotional service. Chapter 14 continues with some of these items, and we will continue on next week on this. So I will stop here. If you have any comments, questions, please, this is a good time.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my obeisances. It's a beautiful, beautiful class. One of the Nectarians, among the others. Every day it becomes better one actually. So this one, if it is much better. Especially your realizations with the Karamkanan Maharaj and you making an effort to visit there, it just melted my heart. So thankful of in your association here. The few things you mentioned about, like especially the Dham, many of us, I'm just speaking for myself, we have a great desire to stay in the Dham, but it becomes very difficult practically or materially bound responsibilities. So how do we reconcile that fact and stay in that kind of a mood as well?
Yes, actually, very nice question. And we were just reading about this 2 days ago. One very nice lecture of Srila Prabhupada is there on a verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita in which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is speaking to Sanatana Goswami. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentions that for anything in devotional service, to do any activity in devotional service, any of these 64 items, we need the empowerment. The empowerment has to be there that's given by the spiritual master particularly. Prabhupada says the guru gives the empowerment, or the Vaishnavas, if the guru is not present there. So even to chant the holy name of Krishna, we cannot do it independently. Right? Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Krishna Setomar, Krishna Diti Paro, Amito Kangal, Krishna Krishna Boli Dhai Tava Pache Pache. That Krishna is yours, you can give him to me. Amito, I am useless, I am simply running after you, calling Krishna, Krishna. So even to chant the holy name of Krishna, we need the empowerment to chant. In the same way, to reside in the Dham, it's our great desire, but we need the empowerment. We need the qualification to reside there. Yes, residing there gives us bhava bhakti. Just like going on the altar, worshiping the deity gives us bhava bhakti. But like in the case of the altar, right, in worshiping the deity, we know that that gives us, but in order to go there, we have to get second initiation, which is essentially the spiritual master empowering us to do that service. Well, in the case of the Dham, it's the same thing. And that's why you see in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, Lord Chaitanya tells the Goswamis to go to Vrindavan, revive the places of pastimes of Krishna, and write books. And so therefore the Goswamis go. But the other devotees don't go. Until Lord Chaitanya doesn't tell them to go, they don't go. So Srila Prabhupada has given us the empowerment to visit the Dham once a year for the festivals. Because he told us he wanted all the devotees of the Krishna conscious movement to go once a year to Mayapur, particularly Vrindavan and Mayapur, he says, for the Gaur Purnima festivals. And or any time. And he said once a year we should go and visit. So that's the empowerment that he gave us. Right? So we have the right to do that. Now, above and beyond that, we can do it, but we need the empowerment, the instruction of the spiritual master, then we can go. Or the Lord or the devotee, somehow it has to be a very clear message that we should go. There's one godbrother that I have, and in his Vyas Puja, he was mentioning how my Guru Maharaj told him that you can go to Vrindavan. You go and you stay in Vrindavan. So even to this day, to devotees who are very special, the spiritual or who have a service there, the spiritual master tells them, you go and stay in Vrindavan. And then I was thinking, why is this devotee like this? He's saying this in Vyas Puja, like, maybe it's like, I felt like, why is he advertising this? And then I read the biography of my spiritual master, and he was an elderly devotee. This devotee had done so much service for my Guru Maharaj's Delhi project. He was like one of the people who had, really helped make it happen. I think he had, designed the building. He had found the architect, convinced him, and he was a world famous architect, and then designed it. And then like every stage he was there just working day and night. And because he had served so nicely, the Vaishnavas, the spiritual master, was so pleased. They're like, now go and live in Vrindavan. But to others, he didn't give that instruction. He said, no, you stay in Delhi and you preach here. They go to Vrindavan and Maharaj meets them there and say, when are you going back? Like they'll go to Vrindavan for a short visit, and then Guru Maharaj will come there and say, why are you here for such a long time? When are you going back? He doesn't let them stay. This is like the joke in Delhi, because Delhi is very close to Vrindavan. So naturally, and Delhi is like this big, materialistic city, right? And so the devotees are always like, if let's say Vrindavan's 2 hours away, you'd be on a taxi every weekend, right? Let's go to Vrindavan. Krishna Balram, their Mangalarti, and then the Maha counter in the back, Govinda's restaurant, all these things. It's like a spiritual Disney World. And so devotees, they run off to Vrindavan all the time. They want to. But the joke there in Delhi is that if you want to go, you have to go in secret, because because Guru Maharaj never lets anyone go. Because he said, no, you stay here and you preach here. And to some devotees, he said, this is your Vrindavan. In your preaching the glories of Vrindavan, you will experience Vrindavan. Don't try to go and artificially attain Vrindavan. Through your service, attain Vrindavan. So he tells them, you're preaching here, your service here, this is your Vrindavan. Because we're not actually so much interested in just trying to grab Vrindavan. Rather, what we're interested in is that Vrindavan Dham reveals herself to us, right? That the Dham actually reveals herself to us. And that revelation happens within our service. And some very advanced devotees have told me this, that actually they feel more connected through their service than if they live in Vrindavan. They feel more connected to Krishna when they're doing their services than when they're actually there in the Dham. So yeah. So both are there. So for some devotees, the service is Vrindavan. For some, their service is preaching Vrindavan. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu. You answered more questions than what I could ask. Thank you.
Thank you. No, such a nice point you raised. Such a nice question. Vijayashri Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you for your guidance. I just wanted to ask in the point on lavish deity worship, Prabhupada has stressed that householders must or should install deities and engage the whole family, and that will in turn help us get closer to Krishna. So my question is that, so is there a level of purification, preparation in our spiritual life, which will qualify us to install deities? Should we wait for for some, do you need to be initiated to install deities? As a non-initiated devotee, I might think that, that is my qualification, or if I can still install, how would I know? Because we have doubts that we are doing services at home now, but the regularity, the timings are the regularity might be there, but the timings are quite erratic. So then their thought comes that what if we end up not living up to the services when we install the deities? So how would we know?
Yes. So all of us should install Gaur-Nitai deities in our home. Every home should have Gaur-Nitai deities, and everyone can have Gaur-Nitai deities regardless if they're initiated, not initiated. Even if they're eating meat, they can have Gaur-Nitai deities. Srila Prabhupada wanted the devotees who are distributing books to distribute books, and if people were willing to pay and accept, also distribute Gaur-Nitai deities, like mass distribute them, to take them in boxes, the deity in a nice box, and to distribute it along with the books. But he said Gaur-Nitai just sitting in their home will bless them. Because with Gaur-Nitai worship, you can only get blessings. You cannot make any offenses. So by bringing Gaur-Nitai in our home and worshiping them very nicely, we can get love of Krishna, pure love for Krishna. As far as Radha Krishna worship, that we should wait, like you're saying, until we are initiated. And then we should worship Radha Krishna if we have the desire. Gaur-Nitai worship is complete. We don't need anything further. But if we have the desire to do Radha Krishna worship, then we should do it after initiation and with the guidance of the spiritual master. So we ask the spiritual master, say, can I have Radha Krishna deities? And they may say yes or no, or they may say, wait a little. And then we should ask them, how should I worship them? Because Radha Krishna worship is very tricky. And if we don't do it properly, we can make offenses, and that can cause suffering in our life. The reaction comes, it definitely comes, and it causes great havoc in our spiritual life. So Radha Krishna worship is more serious. Of course, if they're not installed, then that level of worship is less, and the offense is also less serious. But still, Radha Krishna worship is very serious. We don't take it lightly. But Gaur-Nitai, Lord Chaitanya is Radha and Krishna combined. Nityananda is Lord Balaram. So by installing Gaur-Nitai in our home, we have all of them in our home. And Lord Chaitanya is the most merciful, and Lord Nityananda, most munificent. So it's not that we can, everyone should have Gaur-Nitai deities in their home. Because the home is only meant for this purpose. The home belongs to the Lord. And we can keep the worship very simple. Because especially if we have a temple next to us, our goal should be to serve the deities in the temple, to serve the temple. So we want to keep our deity worship rather simple, and you can do that with Gaur-Nitai deities.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Very nice question. Thank you. Anari Radha Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept
Hare
my humble
Krishna.
obeisance, Mr. Prabhupada.
Please accept my
Uh,
obeisances.
I just wanted to appreciate your class, and then also Mataji's question, because about the Gaur Nitai. I'm curious about pictures of Radha Krishna, though, like pictures
yeah.
of Radha Krishna are okay?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
We can have. That's actually a very nice thing. We should have pictures of Radha and Krishna, pictures of Jagannath, Baleswadra, and then maybe deities of Gaur-Nitai.
But like if someone is not really a devotee, or maybe they're still eating meat, would
Yeah.
you know, as devotees who kind of know this stuff, would you would you suggest we just give them Gaur Nitai pictures if we don't
No.
have little statues? Or
We should definitely give them Gaur-Nitai pictures, because the picture can also be a deity if we worship them nicely. So Gaur-Nitai, we should give, if they're not ready for the deity, we should give them a picture. In any form, Gaur-Nitai should be there. And then no matter what their spiritual level is, they're eating meat or whatever, they can always have pictures of Radha and Krishna. And this is why the books are in every home, regardless if they're eating meat, and the books are filled with paintings of Krishna, right? So paintings, no problem. And you want to say, well, then what's the difference? Because isn't a painting also a deity? Yes and no, because a painting can be a deity, but a painting is still just a painting. It's not a deity, in that way. So Prabhupada was fine with distributing paintings of Krishna everywhere, because the painting is of a different, and this is why in some ways, if you don't install Radha and Krishna, people have Krishna statues in their home, and that's okay. It's not, still it's better, because at least they think or see Krishna sometimes. But here we're talking in terms of regular worship, like the regular worship of a deity, that we should do first to Gaur-Nitai, and then when we are under the guidance of a senior devotee, then we can do Radha Krishna deity worship. But pictures, no problem.
right. Thank you. And then my question was about Varnashram Dharma, and it sounds like, because a lot of times we, especially in Sunday Gita classes, we talk about karma yoga, and then Varnashram Dharma is naturally a part of that. And I'm just wondering if you could explain the difference between karma yoga and Varnashram Dharma. Yeah.
Yes. So karma yoga is when we connect to Krishna through activity, through action. So any action that we do, if we do it for Krishna, that's karma yoga. Varnashram is more a spiritual social system that situates us in a particular mode of action and in a particular stage of life. So if we are a warrior type, then we get situated as a warrior. But just because we're situated as a warrior doesn't mean that we're doing karma yoga. It doesn't mean that we're doing it for Krishna. Now, the goal of Varnashram is that the Brahmanas, who are devotees of Krishna, are guiding the other classes. So the goal of Varnashram is that gradually bring the whole society to the platform of karma yoga. Gradually, through their activities, everyone is coming to the platform of karma yoga. So everyone connects to Krishna through their particular mode of action and occupation. But in of itself, Varnashram is not karma yoga. And that's why karma yoga is, when done with devotion, it is bhakti yoga. But Varna ashram, unless it is done like Daivi Varnashram, unless it's done directly under the guidance of a devotee, Varnashram is just Varnashram. It's just a social system. So it's not necessarily that people in the social system are going to do their work for Krishna.
Right. Thank you so much. Yep. I like that clarification.
Yes. Nice point, actually. Yes. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Manohar Chaitanya Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Please accept my obeisances.
Dhanavad.
Uh, very nice to keep associating with you every week like this. Prabhuji, so I just want you to elaborate a little bit about, what all things, we can do with somebody who has, this previous inclination, like, not of course of going to what is that, those discos and pubs, but, something like watching movies or something like
Mm.
Especially these days it's prevalent everywhere, so so how to get rid of, like, one point you told, like, here is like the deity worship. I want you to little elaborate on that and also other things which we can do to keep ourselves more safe from this so-called, it doesn't appear much like an addiction, but it just comes over, I mean, very slowly. So like, we need to be very careful. So please, whenever heart wants it, what should we do? So it's
Yeah, that's a nice question. Actually, before, you know how you get on the plane and they have the screen there? Then before, I had, I would, when I sit on the plane, I'd want to watch the movies there. Like, it was like, okay, we didn't have TV at home or anything. So I would be like, okay, this is the few hours of Maya that I have. I can watch these movies there. And the funny thing that happens that just recently, about I don't know, some time ago, like I just lost my desire to watch the movies on the plane. Like I don't watch them anymore. I don't want to watch them and I can't stand watching them. Because it's like, I don't know, it just, every movie it made you feel sick after watching it. It's like someone dies or there's some, like, just, you start to realize that this material world is so disgusting. And these movies are just telling stories of the disgusting material world with their disgusting lives. Just so selfish, so so the whole thing is the higher taste. These 5 most potent items of devotional service, when we engage in them, we get that higher taste. So associating with the devotees of the Lord, right? By associating with them, we get this higher taste, a spiritual, like, happiness, a spiritual taste for spiritual things. By reading Bhagavatam, we get a spiritual taste. By chanting, we get a spiritual taste. By living in the Dham or visiting the Dham, we get a spiritual taste. So, so increase our spiritual things, and then we'll automatically decrease the material things. Things that we should do, things in spiritual life that give us great inspiration. For some of us, it may be something. For another one, it may be something else. Like for me personally, I discovered over time that the thing that gives me a lot of inspiration is distributing books, even though I didn't think that it would, but somehow it does. And when I do that, then I don't feel interested like I used to in the material things, because I find it to be a greater thrill distributing books than the thrill of material life, So we all have to find the thing that gives us great satisfaction and pleasure. And when we latch onto that, then we'll enjoy that more than the taste of watching movies. Because you're right, even very advanced devotees, like I've seen, they still watch movies, like Hollywood movies or this. And I go like, why? But they'll still, and then Sachinanda Maharaj in one class, he clarified that sometimes due to cultural conditioning, we have certain habits and attachments that are very deep, that are hard to get rid of. But just because a devotee watches a movie doesn't mean that they're necessarily a fallen devotee. Due to cultural conditioning is there, the interest is there, or they're watching a game of football because they grew up seeing football. But just because they watch the game of football doesn't mean that they're a fallen devotee. Or just because they like to, I don't know, do a particular activity, engage in some hobby, material hobby, doesn't necessarily mean they're a fallen devotee. But we also have our cultural conditioning. But over time, that conditioning goes away. the more we engage in Krishna's direct service. And then the last question. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Last question, Kamala Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Dandit Pranam Prabhuji. Thank you so much for such a beautiful class and sharing your experiences with Guru Maharaj and Kanan Maharaj as well. So it was really very heart touching, and it was very insightful. And Prabhuji, but I do also have a question regarding the deity worship. So what happened is like we were gifted Jagannath Baldev Subhadra Mai by one devotee who went there to Jagannath Puri. So I was just wondering, like, whether we've started serving them as we were previously doing our services. So we do the aarti and we do the bhogas, everything. We try to do on time. So is it necessary for us to install them, or is it fine like we just serve them as so?
Yeah. Well, I would say that we should not install them until we know for sure that for the rest of our life we can keep up that standard. Because once you install the deities, then it's very serious.
Yes.
If they're not installed, then still there's room for like, okay, one day you're sick, you're not able to do it, but if you install the deities, then you are committing yourself to a certain standard of worship. So sometimes that means Krishna wants us to serve him that way. Due to circumstance, we may get certain deities, right? Like my wife Devi Murthy, before she became a devotee, she had Radha Gopinath deities. So therefore, when she got married, she brought the deities with her, and so we have Radha Gopinath deities. Although, in ISKCON, after ISKCON devotees, we would never have gotten Radha Krishna deities because we don't feel qualified, and it's like a great commitment to serve them. But somehow, due to arrangement, they're already there. So then they're already there. We have to serve them, right? And so we serve them to the best of our ability. Same thing with Jagannath. So that someone gave them to you, they're already there. Now they're there. So, but I would say don't install them until you don't bring it to the next level. Like first maintain this level, and then once you're confident, then you can do more.
Yeah. But because like sometimes it so happens that we travel or something like that. So how are we going to we do some arrangements, but what about we're not able to do the aarti or something like that. So I was wondering, because some of the devotees suggested that we should install them, and I was little confused. What should we do? And this topic came, so I thought, let me ask you.
Yeah. Well, by installing them, then that problem becomes greater. Like if they're not installed, like when you travel, you can either take them with you, or you can close the curtains, leave them some water and nuts, and during that time you don't serve them, or leave them at a devotee's home, depending on how your situation is. But you have options. But once you install them, then you have to ensure that worship goes on, even when you're traveling.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for clarifying that one. So that makes more sense. Like we should have some flexible ability, because we are not so perfect now, and we're just learning. So
yes. Also, we can serve the deity mentally. Like if we're far away, we can still offer them to their picture. We can still, serve them from a distance. So we can they're still our lords, right? They're still our deities. So if we can't take them with us, then wherever we are, when we cook, we're offering it to their picture as a way of, connecting. Yeah. Or sometimes when we worship the temple deity, then if we have a temple nearby, then that worship is also accepted by our home deities. So, yeah, it's a big topic.
Okay. So Prabhuji, if we are offering the food, because anyways we don't eat for offering. So if we are offering the food, and at that time, if we can just call our deities to join them and eat with other deities if they are there, so that makes it completes the process, right? Is my understanding correct?
if we do it with the temple deities, because Prabhupada said that the temple deities, your deities, the home deities, are actually manifestations of the temple deities. So you cannot go to someone else's home and offer to their deities, and it goes to your deities. Most likely you cannot. But the temple deities are different. Yeah.
Okay.
But this is a very big topic, and honestly, I don't know the answers to these questions really well. And so that's why actually it's good to consult a devotee who's in deity worship, who's very in tune with that. So yes.
Sure, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Devi Murthy, Devi Dasi, this will be the last one, then we'll end.
Hare Krishna. So I've seen one devotee couple here. What they do when they travel, they carry the picture of their deities, and then wherever they go, they keep the picture in their altar, and then they offer bhoga through the picture, rather than carrying, because the deities that they have, they're huge, big deities. So that's how they serve. I'm not sure if that's correct or.
Yes, exactly. No, that's a very nice point. That we can carry the picture and then offer to the picture, and then that will be accepted by our deities. Again, if they're installed, then I don't think that works. We have to then ensure that they get that. But if they're home deities, then like this we can do. And we offer to the picture. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for your very kind attention. We'll end here. Shri Rupa Goswami ki jai. And next time we'll continue on. Oh, so no, next time, actually, I want to, very important, next time there's no class next week. So please use that week to catch up if you're behind in the homework. I think some of you are behind, so please catch up to do that. Next Saturday, we won't have any class, and we'll recontinue the Saturday after that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Prabhuji.
you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare
Hare Krishna.